Today we are working on 9.2. Yesterday we worked on adding and subtracting polynomials. And today we are multiplying a polynomial and factoring a polynomial. This example here is asking us to simplify. The first thing we need to truly do is, when you start simplifying here, is understanding our different terms. And we've talked about distributing, and now we are going to distribute here, but making sure we take it to every single term inside this parenthesis. So as you can see here, we have our -2 times g squared is going to be what I am distributing to everything in the entire parenthesis. So first, which we can see happens here, second, we're going to distribute to this -6g, and then the last one, taking this entire -2 times g squared, all of it to -5. What is very important here that you have to be careful with is our negative signs. So notice here this -2, this negative sign went with every single one. We did not just leave it out front. Okay, -2 here, -2 here, and then -2. It gets distributed to everything. Same with here. If you have inside, don't be afraid to keep flip change and leave it as a -5, and everything's addition in between. So let's continue to simplify. -2g squared times 3g to the third. Well, like terms, -2 times 3 gives you -6. G squared times g cubed, same term, same basis. So what do we do with their exponents? We add. So 2 plus 3, as you can see here, we're going to get 5. Now, -2 times 6, -12. G squared times g is going to be g cubed. -2 times -5 is going to give you a +10. G squared is my only g term, so we just drop that down. So this is my simplified answer. Let's take a look at another one. Here, it is asking you to find the greatest common factor of 2x to the fourth plus 10x squared minus 6x. When you're asked to find the greatest common factor, we're going to do things a little different. Here we are going to list the prime factors of each term and figure out what is common in all. So here's my first term, 2x to the fourth. Second term, 10x squared. Third term, -6x. So 2x to the fourth. How can I break this down? Okay, prime factorization, we've made factor trees. So think of it as 2. How can I break 2 down? Well, 2 times 1. How can I break x to the fourth down? Well, that's really x squared times x squared. What's really x squared? X times x, x times x. So what is it? It's really 2 times x times x times x times x. Take a look at 10x squared. 10, make it my factor tree. 10 is 5 times 2. Both 5 and 2 are prime, so I can leave them. Now x squared. How do I break x squared down? Well, x squared is really x times x. So you can see here they wrote 2 times 5 times x times x. 6x. How do I break 6x down? Well, 6 is 2 times 3, and x can stand by itself. So now you can see they've color-coded this nicely for you between the red and the black. The red is what all three of these terms here have in common. So they all have a 2. They all have an x. And that is the only thing in common with all of them. So what is our greatest common factor? Well, the greatest common factor is 2 times x, which is 2x. Now the directions have changed, and they're going to ask you to factor out a monomial. So here, first part is find the greatest common factor. So once again, taking a look at my 3 terms and finding what is common, the biggest thing that's common in all of them. So you can break it down. 4x cubed 2 times 2 times x times x times x. Same thing for 8x squared. Break 8 down. What is 8? Well, it's 4 times 2. I can break 4 down, which is 2 times 2. So it's really 2 times 2 times 2, which you can see here. X squared is x times x. 12. How do I break 12 down? Well, that's times 4. 3's prime. 4, 2 and 2. 2 times 2 times 3 times x. So what is common in all of them? You can see this in red, and there's 2 2's in everything, and then there's an x in everything. So it's 4x is my greatest common factor. Now we take our greatest common factor, and we're going to factor that out of our original. So you can see here, this is my greatest common factor. They've pulled that out of each of these 3 terms. So when I pull out a 4x from here, what do I get left with? Well, you get left with x squared, because when you can reverse this and check it, 4x distributed to 4x squared is 4x cubed. Same here for 8, negative 8x squared. I'm going to pull out a 4. What are you going to get left with? Well, negative 8 divided by 4 is going to give me a negative 2. X squared divided by x is going to give you x. So what's in blue here is what you get left with after you pull this out. Same thing happens for this last term. You get left with a 3. Now, because I pulled the same thing out of everything, I can rewrite this. Put what I pulled out, my greatest common factor here, that's my GCF, and then put everything in blue, just put that in 1. So you put this in 1. So understanding this is where we started today's lesson with, and we would distribute this out, and that's the way to check it, is how we started, being able to distribute, but also starting with what we were working with and working backwards. That's all for the lesson today.